Congressman, we saw that, and we only played it because you put it out on your Twitter feed. Why'd you do that?
Well, I'm frankly just tired of these threats coming anonymously to us in our direct message feed, on our voicemails. Oftentimes the interns have to listen to them. And I thought, you know what, we're going to call out these cowards. And oftentimes that has led to them being identified by their law enforcement or their employer. Someone was fired last week after I posted a direct message threat. And I want them to also know you're not going to silence me, that this is not effective. And hopefully it's a deterrent when people see that individuals are being arrested, convicted, losing their jobs.
You were stripped of your committees. Why?
Well, political vengeance. Kevin McCarthy seems to want to heat up the leftovers of a story that goes back to Barack Obama's first term. FBI has said 3 different times in a rare form, they never talk about investigations, that all I did was help them, never suspected of wrongdoing. Today, the Washington Post fact checker, Glenn Kessler, put out a story giving McCarthy 4 Pinocchios for his claims. But the consequence of his claims is not just that I'm not on the committee and he's weaponized the Intelligence Committee. It's that it inspires these death threats. People parrot what Kevin McCarthy is saying when they call and make the threats. And so he knows that. We've told this to him. I have told this to him. I have, publicly broadcast to him that when you do this, it leads to threats to me, my wife, our kids. Recently, someone said that they were going to rape and kill my children, and they were using the language that Kevin McCarthy was using. So there is a cost to all of this.
What does he say when you tell him that?
He doesn't care. He wants to focus on, carrying out the vengeance that he has promised in this corrupt bargain. He won't even stop and talk to me when I have tried to talk to him. He has promised that he's going to kick me, Adam Schiff, and Ilhan Omar off committees, and he has, as we've seen, he's put Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and George Santos onto committees. And I want to take you back to 2004, after that election. You probably remember George W. Bush, recently reelected, looked into a press conference and said, I have political capital and I intend to use it. And I remember as a Democrat thinking, oh boy, he just won big and he's going to, carry out his agenda now. What you're seeing here is a party that barely won the House, lost the Senate. Kevin McCarthy took 15 votes, to become Speaker. He doesn't have political capital. He has a political deficit. He's not delivering on inflation, gas, grocery costs, healthcare, border, crime, all the things he told the voters he would deliver on. They have created a law firm, Insurrection LLC, and they're just going to carry out Donald Trump's grievances. Talk about not reading the room or the country this past election.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, you take it to the political reality of this, and the reason there was no red wave, and the reason it took McCarthy 15 votes to become Speaker is because he has no margin, and he needed the people who are so dangerous that everything I know about Paul Gosar, I learned on this program from his relatives who came on our show to warn us about how dangerous he is. And really, the most strident rebuke of Paul Gosar came from other people whose last name was Gosar.
That's right.
The idea that McCarthy, who's sort of on a political knife's edge, is elevating, and the fact that all the people in his caucus are the most extreme elements of the Republican Party seems to leave the Republican flank totally open to make some real gains politically. What are your plans if you have some free time by not being on this important committee to do just that?
And to my wife, it's like, don't threaten us with a good time.
You can do pickup.
Yeah, you're doing car pickup. You're going to do more diapers.
Yeah.
But frankly, I'm going to storm across the country and help us in many of those tight seats where we barely lost. There are 18 Biden Republicans who earnestly went to the voters and said they want to get things done in Washington. And Kevin McCarthy has signed their political death certificate because in his corrupt bargain, he has promised this rogues gallery that they're going to defund the troops by $75 billion. That Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's glorified violence, is going to play a leading role in investigations. That he's going to allow essentially Al Capone to investigate Elliot Ness with Jim Jordan's Committee to Obstruct Justice, people who are under investigation. They're going to have to vote on all of this, and here's what's going to happen: they're either going to have to vote with McCarthy, and it's going to make them susceptible to losing in a general, or they're going to vote against him with the Democrats, and they're going to be susceptible to losing in a primary. So he's really, I think, put them in the most turmoil.
There are real threats to the country in this Republican-controlled House and the way that McCarthy gained the gavel. And I wonder if you can just take me through what you think the first challenges will be for the country. You can start with the debt ceiling.
Yeah. So Janet Yellen sent a letter to Congress last week that, we are approaching the debt ceiling. And just so your viewers know, this means that we are essentially meeting the obligations that we've already budgeted for and spent. We're not spending new money because we're extending the ceiling. We're meeting the promises that we've made. And so if you don't like that we spent that much money, then run for office and say what you're going to do with the budget and then have your own budget when you're in power. But this is much of it's Donald Trump's budget that he put into place.
His bills, right.
And so you'll see, a global financial collapse, unable to pay veteran benefits, unable to pay, Social Security recipients. And of course, anyone's 401k would be in a free fall. Then in the fall, of course, we'd have to fund the government again. And they've said that they would leverage that to try and put cuts against Social Security and Medicare. And then, the battle in Ukraine. And today was a tough day in Ukraine. Its interior minister, someone I had gone to see in October in Kyiv, died in a helicopter crash with many others. And, he very much inspired me when I met with him because he was committed to freedom. His country's committed to freedom. Their fight is our fight. And the greatest asset that Russia has right now would be a Republican Party that is unwilling to help Ukraine. So there's a lot on the line, and Democrats are united to deliver the votes if Kevin McCarthy wants to come to us. But if he doesn't, it could be pretty ugly.
And which way do you think McCarthy will go?
I think you're going to see Speaker, discharge. The country's going to learn that word because a discharge petition, like the worst named, political term you could think of, means that if you get, a majority of the Congress to come forward to support legislation, you can go around the Speaker. So I think we're going to have to go around the Speaker to do all of that. And that form of governing will effectively become the Speaker of the House because I don't think he has the, political backbone to stand up to the people he just struck that bargain with.
The whole country saw that as he scrambled around trying to get Paul Gosar
and Marjorie Taylor
to vote president. I mean, in the end, they didn't even support him. They just voted president. I want to come back to this this threat of political violence. I think because you've shared with the country the specific threats against you and your family and your very young family, it's so tangible. But it's also already happened. And I think the thing that anyone in the public arena fears is not necessarily for themselves, but for their families, where there's never quite as much security when they're not at a location. And when you look at the response to the tragic targeting and shooting of Steve Scalise, it was universal condemnation. There were no outliers on either side of the ideological spectrum. And when you look at the reaction to Paul Pelosi's attack and attacker, Donald Trump, and right-wing media figures for circulating conspiracy theories almost immediately, and not not just trolls on the internet, Elon Musk and Donald Trump. What does that do in terms of this unstable alleged shooter in New Mexico, the very unstable adherent of conspiracy theories who targeted the Pelosi home? What is the effect of this muddied message / encouraging and excitement and refusal to condemn the language of political violence on the right? I
asked this very question of Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League when he testified to the Judiciary Committee. What happens when political leaders are silent? And he essentially said, it is noticed among the extreme. It's essentially a flashing green light. And if we don't unify the way we did after Steve Scalise was shot. I wore an LSU hat for a month, and so did my Democratic colleagues in solidarity. If we don't unify and use our unity as the antidote to violence, it is a flashing green light for more violence.
Do you see any discomfort? I mean, I've also had, and I know you know them very well, some of the Capitol Police officers who turned their horrors and the tragedy of being physically assaulted by Trump supporters into an opportunity to talk about the challenges facing our democracy. They were shunned and scorned by some of the same voices on the political right. Do you find any pockets of discomfort with this anti-law enforcement and refusal to condemn the language of political violence?
And monetizing the idea to defund the FBI, right? That was how Marjorie Taylor Greene raised money for her campaign. Yeah, it is uncomfortable to protect people that believe that, you didn't have a right to protect the Capitol. Remember, they're sympathizing with Ashley Babbitt. They didn't go to the January 6th event that we had this year.
Right.
They've gone
One
to the
did,
DC
one
jail.
did,
One of them
right,
did.
right,
Brian
right,
Fitzpatrick,
right.
former FBI agent.
Right.
They went to the DC jail. That's where they have continued to go to show solidarity. And so I think, it's never been about backing the blue. It's backing the coup now, and anything that logically flows to support that.
What do you worry about when you look at our politics? I mean, you had a prominent role in the impeachments. You've now got Republican House members. I think they're talking about expunging the impeachments from Trump's record. I mean, what do you look at? What do you see on the horizon? What
I mostly worry about is political rhetoric is always going to be hot. But now with vast access to social media, political leaders not condemning the violence, you mix that in with a country that is absolutely armed to the teeth, and even more so because of Supreme Court decisions, governors trying to outflank each other with access to firearms. That's a deadly cocktail, and I just fear that what we saw in New Mexico, just in the last month, a lawmaker, a former candidate shooting up the homes of lawmakers, that will beget more violence. And that's why it's so important. We can't stop all violence, but we can speak out.